Roland Walker. This one is on our hearts. Well, just like the one that we've discussed, but this has young people at the center. And we did condemn the action, talked about it initially when it happened, but there's an update, Roland?
Yes, definitely. We do know that the update is that one of the students did admit to stealing, of course charged, but there's a bigger issue about infringement on the rights of these young people, and then also the mental health of the children. And Mamabi, we also have to say that, well, a fine of some 1,200 and a signing of a bond of good behavior for 12 months was also signed by that very student. As Ejisu Asari also did indicate in an earlier report that other students also accused of stealing attempted suicide in the process. But look, let's bring you more updates as we recap the story.
It was court day today here at the Jabin Circuit Court, and we had two people appearing before the court, presided over by Her Ladyship Veronique Praba Tete. And these two people involved one, a student of the school, who together with another colleague were alleged to have scaled the wall of the school and stolen the electric stabilizer of the school. Now, if you remember, these two students were allegedly held by the assistant headmaster in his office overnight, leading to one of them trying to take his own life. Now, appearing before the court today, Gajesberg Asameti, an 18-year-old student, pleaded not guilty to charges of unlawful entry, but pleaded guilty with explanation to conspiracy to commit crime. And after his explanation that they did not intend to steal the electric stabilizer, the judge herself entered a not guilty plea on his behalf. Now he pleaded guilty to another charge of stealing the school's electric stabilizer, and he was convicted on that count to spend a day in jail and pay an amount of 1,200 Ghana cedis, and he's also to sign a bond of good behavior for 12 months. Now, second to appear before Her Ladyship was the assistant headmaster of the Ejisu Technical School, Apia Albert Kofi. Now, he was charged with assault. The court explained to him that when the students were arrested by the taxi driver and handed over to him, he allegedly slapped the two of them before locking them up in the office. And he also faces charges of unlawful imprisonment and abetment to commit crime, to wit, suicide, attempted suicide. And they explained to him that indeed he left harmful substances in his office, and knowing very well that he had harmful substances in his office, he locked the students up in there overnight, leading to one of them drinking detergent, leading to his hospitalization. He pleaded not guilty to all the three charges, and he has been granted bail of 5,000 Ghana cedis with one surety to appear before the court again next month. Now, the other student who attempted suicide whilst in custody in the office of the assistant headmaster could not come to court today. His father came to court with a medical report from the Ejisu Government Hospital indicating that he has been hospitalized. And so he faces a charge of attempted suicide, and the case has been adjourned to next month. Reporting for JoyNews, Ejisu Asari, Kumasi.
Well, and as we begin the discussion, we also do know that Erastus will be joining us to enable us tease out what's the latest as far as this case is. But we have to speak broadly to the conversation, Mama V.
Yes, we do. Dr. Akwasi Osei is the CEO of the Mental Health Authority. Dr. Ruth Owusu-Atwi is Head Psychiatry Department, Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital, Vice President of the Ghana Psychiatrists Association. We've got Christian Malm-Hesse, and he is a lawyer. And of course, our own Erastus Asare-Donkor giving us that court report, also joining us. Good morning to all of you. Let me hear you say good morning back to me if you can hear me.
Good morning.
Good to have you.
Thank you.
Hopefully you've been following this story from the beginning. This story that Erastus broke for us here at JoyNews about 2 students who were accused initially of stealing. They were locked up in an office overnight. One person ended up drinking a substance that, which later on we were told he had tried to commit suicide. What do you make of what has happened so far from the psychiatry point of view?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. Well, what we must understand is that suicide behavior, when I say suicide behavior, having the suicidal ideations, that means thinking about suicide, planning about suicide, and actually attempting suicide is very high in the adolescent. Actually, a study has been done among senior high students by one Professor, and it's been published. Well, it was in a team, a group published in 2017, that this kind of risk or behavior was found to be very prominent among SHS students. One of the reasons that has been identified in this group as a risk factor is psychological and pain, or to escape shame in this particular group of people. And so when the headmaster decided that I needed to take an action, if he had information or he had how would I even put, if he thought about suicide, then he would have put measures in place and probably not taken the step he took. He could have taken alternative steps, that maybe go to your dormitory, I'll put you in charge of your senior prefect or your dorm prefect, then you come back in the morning, we will deal with this, and make them understand that what they have done is wrong and the reason why they should receive some form of punishment for it and all that. But the humiliation that went with the process would make a young person decide that I will not live to face the shame that awaits me in the morning. And so it shows that by and by, as people who live with an age group called the adolescent, or people who work with this age group, our knowledge about suicide is still very low, and especially for an SHS assistant headmaster who did not think about it. And I'll not blame him, because the education about suicide is really on the low side in this country. But if he had a foreknowledge, then it would have clicked that even at least in his room or his office where he kept these children, he would have made sure that there is nothing there that they can use to harm themselves or they can use to attempt suicide. And so this story clearly brings to light how our knowledge, our information, our spread on information about suicide is very low in this country. It's not just among people who work with SHS students, but generally very low among Ghanaians in general.
So, Doc, let's take the suicide attempt out of the conversation. Let's talk about in terms of punishing a student by keeping them in an office overnight. What's wrong psychologically with that? Is there anything wrong with it?
Certainly, there is everything wrong with it. I would let the lawyer throw more light on the legal aspect. Legally, you cannot take the law into your own hands and lock somebody up that way. Lock them up, let them take off their clothes. I understand these young people were slapped even before they went through this ordeal and all that. So certainly the whole procedure was wrong. I am for discipline, but there are some disciplines, there are some forms of disciplines that eventually would be seen as an abuse. There's actually a thin line between discipline and abuse. If you don't have, if you don't take care, you easily cross the line from discipline to abuse. And so locking them up in an office, no bed, even if you are in prison, you have an opportunity to lie down on a bed and sleep. But locking them up, making them take their clothes, so being exposed to health hazards with all the kind of weather we are having now was totally not appropriate. And I think that alternative ways could have been employed in this situation. And I gave an example that these students could have been allowed to go back to their dormitory, and adolescents appreciate it when you have given them the reason why behind everything. Okay, so I am doing this because of so and so. You were caught scaling a wall in the possession of maybe a property that belongs to the school, blah, blah, blah. It is against the school rules. It is against the school ethics. It is late now. I'll put you in the care of your dormitory prefect or your house prefect. Make sure that you don't scale the wall again in the night. And in the morning, we will call you before the disciplinary committee. These are the measures that we will take, but we need to take them because we want it to serve probably as a deterrent to others. We want to make sure that you are of a good behavior. You explain all of these to the person, to the young person, so that they understand the reasons behind the actions you are taking. But simply locking them.
Okay, so Dr. Owusu-Atwi's network just frozen a little bit on us, but she's still with us. If you can hear me, ma'am, just stay with us. Let me bring into the conversation Dr. Akwasi Osei, who is the CEO of the Mental Health Authority, and then Mr. Christian Malm-Hesse, who is a lawyer. Let me start with the lawyer. I'll come to you. Dr. Akwasi Osei, okay, let me come to you. I don't quite have my lawyer on the line. Dr. Akwasi Osei, when the issue of the court updates came up yesterday, I just thought of you and the charge of attempted suicide and the punishment because a gentleman had failed, had not succeeded in committing suicide. Because you've done a lot of advocacy. We want this taken out of our books. And here we are today again with this same thing facing us. So I want to understand where you are, because you've been leading this fight. Where are we with this whole criminal issue of attempted suicide?
Listeners and viewers, as the case may be. Well, we haven't gone very far. A little progress, but not very far. What I mean by a little progress is that the last time you were at the parliament, and you may remember some time back, the issue came, you were at a radio station prior to that with one of the parliamentarians, and the issue of suicide and attempted suicide and criminalization came up. So the MP was convinced by an argument that it should be decriminalized. So he promised to take it up to Parliament. He actually did. He went to Parliament, he made a statement, and that created an uproar with both majority and minority leaders saying that, no, we cannot agree to the decriminalization. We followed up and met them one-on-one. We didn't meet the majority leader, but we met the minority leader, and he agreed eventually to our point that, yes, it should be decriminalized. And that is where we go to, that we were to follow up with a submission to him for him now to present to Parliament. That has not been done yet, the COVID issues and other things. But at least we've now got him to agree that, and not only him, when we were coming out, we met with a number of parliamentarians. And we sold, if you like, we sold our idea to them, and they all bought it. So we've made a little progress along that line. But it now needs to come to the floor for them to agree. And in fact, for the Attorney General now to amend that aspect of the law.
So do we consider this young man as a criminal or a patient?
As far as I'm concerned, well, there are two aspects. Well, initially, what took him to, at least his colleague, to the court was the criminal aspect, the theft. But then, before he himself could go to court, he had attempted suicide. I thought he was being taken to court for the theft. But one of your sister stations yesterday interviewed them, and it's like it's not for the theft per se, but for the attempted suicide. If that is so, it's unfortunate. I think he should be seen as a patient in this matter. After the issue of attempted suicide and whatever was causing the attempt, after that has been settled, then they can go back to the theft case if they want to. But for the attempted suicide, for them to take him to court because it's attempting suicide, then it means we still are not appreciating the point that many of the causes are actually coming from mental issues. Indeed, in this boy's case, what seems to me to be at the bottom of it is an acute stress reaction. The fact that he has been involved in this matter and the embarrassment that faces him, a possibility of going to court and being jailed, all that precipitated an acute stress reaction in him, for which, on impulse, he decided to take his life. It's a mental health issue, and it should be treated as such. I also expect that when he went to the hospital, again, I understand that when the case went to court, the medical report said he was somewhere. I suppose that the medical report will include the fact that he has a mental issue that should be sorted out, in addition to whatever the effect of what he drank might have caused in his stomach, on his stomach.
Is it wrong for people to interpret this as an acceptance of guilt?
Well, as I said, I'm not talking. You come again with the question.
So I'm just looking at, because, you know, this is mental health mixed up with legalities. And I'm just asking if the reaction in terms of attempting to commit suicide, avoiding, if you like, the shame as it's been interpreted, is some way of acceptance of guilt?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. There are many people, you and me and many others, if you are accused of something that you may not have done, the shame of it could precipitate any action, and that might not necessarily mean you are accepting guilt. So we cannot say it's an indication of an acceptance of guilt. The two should be separated.
So is there anything, can there be an intervention today with this matter? We know that it is still in court, but because you've done a lot of follow-ups trying to get this attempted suicide issue to be strictly mental, is there an intervention that can be done from your outfit?
Yes, and especially with my colleagues in Kumasi, and I got the tail end of your discussion with Dr. Owusu-Atwi. So our colleagues in Kumasi, I'm sure they will take it up, and if the case in court is simply for the attempted suicide, we should be able to prevail upon them for him to be seen and treated for the mental health issue, underlying mental health issue, before, if they want to proceed with the theft case, which is a criminal issue, before that can be done. So yes, I'll prevail upon my colleagues, or I urge my colleagues in Kumasi to take it up.
Okay, we thank you for your time, Dr. Akwasi Osei, CEO of the Mental Health Authority, on this subject. He's been doing a lot of work trying to make attempted suicide strictly a mental health issue. Roland would engage our lawyer, Christian Malm-Hesse.
And Mr. Malm-Hesse, I do know, based on the work I've done with some NGOs in the past, that we do have a juvenile act. We also do have a children's act, and a general structure of the way we need to prosecute juveniles. Lay out the framework for us. If, let's say, we have juveniles who needed to be treated in the eyes of the law.
Basically, juveniles, because of because they are minor, the Juvenile Act lays certain procedures within which prosecutions in that nature could be brought against them in certain situations. they are not ordinarily to be hauled before the court as it is done for people, a majority that's adults, and they are mostly heard in camera, and in certain situations their guardian ad litem or their parents are supposed to also be there in the prosecutions of that nature. In such prosecutions also, the policemen normally would not even wear their uniforms and all of that, just because the juveniles are seen as not in that majority age to face all that harsh and formal prosecutions or inquisitorial nature of the justice system.
Signatory to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and this has also been well couched to fit into the Juvenile Act that we have, and the way we tend to deal with so-called flouters of the law who fall in that category. In your estimation, how should the Ghana Education Service be dovetailing this in the way they administer children?
I mean, basically, when it comes to suicide and subsequently prosecution, I mean, where juveniles are involved, I would rather recommend that Ghana Education Service works more with the Mental Health Authority, so that issues relating adolescents related to suicides would properly be harmonized, and a proper legal framework would be couched out, especially more so that the legislative instrument for the Mental Health Act has not properly been put out. It has made some of these things more difficult, because if a young chap attempts to commit suicide, it is basically because that person may be ill functioning in his mind. And if you look at the offenses under the Act 29, which talks about attempt to commit suicide, they put it as a misdemeanor, which one could serve up to 1 year imprisonment. Now, irrespective of whether the person was able to finish the act or not, makes it a preparatory one. But the most important thing is that when the country fails to look at the mental health in the country totally, it creates a problem for the whole country. You have the World Health Organization, which estimates that about 650,000 people in the country have severe mental disorders, and goes on to say that about 2.166 thousand people that are moderate and mild mental patients in the country. That puts it out that in the country that we live in, we have a certain decadence of mental issues, which has gone unchecked. And if you juxtapose it to the Disability Act, the definition under the Disability Act indicates that where somebody suffers from mental impairment suffices to be a disability, so that if that disability would ill function or cause the person not to function properly in society, just as to put his own life at danger, then it is a cause for us to worry.
Okay. Putting
one's life at danger would mean by taking steps to commit suicide. So that if I take steps to commit suicide, then why would the country, through its state protocols, commit such a person to prison term? So there is a certain conflict between the Act 29 and even the Disability Act, which indicates that such impairments create rights for the sick, that particular student, to have rights to mental health treatment, but not imprisonment. So these are some of the conflicts that we have. And it is strife now. We call on the president, we call on the legislature to have some of these things sorted out through the LI or amendments. Aside it, we can have individuals who would go to the Supreme Court and look at the rights under Chapter 5 vis-a-vis the Disability Act and then the Act 29 and see whether such conflicts in the law could cause the attempt to commit suicide under Section 18 of Act 29 to be expunged, because in times of morbidity and understanding of mental impairments, such things needs to be expunged out of the Act to make room for treatments of such mental impairments.
Well, I asked this question because I know that the police also were just following the law, and if you want to implement the full rigors of the law, it also means that you have to implement it appropriately. But we've
yes,
yes. So
there's a discretion. There's a discretion that comes in, so that if the police is to charge the juvenile with attempt to commit suicide, at that point in time, the prosecutor or the CID is fixed either to go through at the Disability Act, Section 59, which gives the definition. Either the police would go through the Disability Act and give the right to that juvenile to have mental treatment, or go through Act 29, Section 18, to have the child prosecuted. And because the CID is at that junction, he decides which one to take. And it becomes problematic when the Act, the Mental Health Act and the Disability Act stipulates how it should go when it comes to mental impairments. And you have the criminal jurisdiction, the criminal regime also indicating custodial sentence for it. So that is the conflict in the law, which ought to be rectified so that we have a harmonization of some of these things.
Okay, Chris Malm-Hesse, thank you for joining us. We'll let you go so that you can work on some of your expedient matters for the day. But we'll go back to our lead psychiatrist before we do, but Mamavi does that. Erastus Asari-Donkor, our main reporter, has been on this beat from day one alongside his colleague. And Erastus, when you follow the case up to the time that you're reporting the suicide and charges thereof that had been put on the student, how would you describe their state?
Well, when you look at especially the boy who drank the detergent, you could see clearly that this is a distraught person, and it shows all over him. And you could see his confusion when I interviewed him. And he told me personally that, well, at that point in time, he felt so ashamed of himself. He could not control the fact that the dad and mom who have struggled to raise him will hear that he has been accused of stealing the school stabilizer, which he never did. And so he couldn't bear all that. He told me that he started the act by trying to stab himself with a trophy in the headmaster's office, but it couldn't go through. And so the next moment he drank the detergent, hoping that it would take effect immediately to get rid of his problems. And so you could see a very confused person, even when he was brought home. When you are interviewing him, you could see that he's far away in thought. He's not himself. He's thinking about so many things at a particular time.
Erastus, how old is this? Is this the 17 or the 80-year-old?
This one is the 17-year-old.
The 17-year-old. So the 18-year-old who was jailed yesterday, it means that he went to jail yesterday. He will be released today, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Is he going to go back to school? Is the school going to accept him?
Looking at how the teachers, their demeanor yesterday in court, which to me looked as if they were happy that he has been incarcerated. I don't think he himself will want to go back to that school. The student, his father was telling me that I should help him move his child from that particular school to a different school. So clearly, these are not students who want to go back to that particular school again.
The assistant headmaster, though, his case has been adjourned. What did the court talk about? What did they expose? Somebody might be asking. The first one was speedily prosecuted. What's the issue with this assistant head teacher?
Well, so yesterday he appeared before the Jabin Circuit Court presided over by Veronique Prabat-Tete, and he was charged with one assault that the students claim that they were slapped severally by him before being locked up in the office. He was also charged with unlawful imprisonment, that he had no right to lock the students up in his office and overnight and leave them to go home. Abetment to commit crime, to wit, attempted suicide is the third charge. And they explained to him that he knew there were harmful substances in his office, and he exposed the children to that harmful substance by locking them up in his office for the student to drink that detergent. And so he, in a way, assisted the student to take his own life. He pleaded not guilty to all the charges. His lawyer was in court to seek bail for him. Bail was granted in the sum of 5,000 Ghana cedis with one surety, and the case will go into trial next month.
Okay, but Erastus, in your earlier interview with him, he had accepted responsibility. He said he indeed kept them in his office overnight, correct?
Yes, and to the extent that he did not mince words, told me that yes, he stripped them down to their boxes before locking them up in his office, and that his office is a very nice place. It has a ceiling fan and a sofa, and so he feels that they were comfortable.
Erastus, have you been able to gauge the mood of students?
You see, many of the students are telling us about ordeals they've gone through at the hands of this assistant headmaster, but none of them will want to go on record for fear that they might be victimized. But there are some of the teachers who are happy with the assistant headmaster's actions. Some of them told me yesterday that the students are very bad, and so it's only the assistant headmaster who can control them with some of these tactics. And if you've seen the videos that the Ejisu SHTS has brought up, you could see some of these students crawling on their knees by the roadside. And this incident happened last year. Again, the assistant headmaster is seen in the video admitting that he asked them to crawl for eating at an inappropriate time. So the issues are plenty. Those that the students are raising about some of them being asked to scoop excreta, human excreta, from the bush to the main toilet and all that. Some of these things, I think the Ghana Education Service needs to look into them.
Okay, just finally on the Ghana Education Service, because there's an administrative procedure also ongoing. Help us appreciate what the Ghana Education Service is also doing with regards to this matter.
I've been told by the regional director, Mrs. Mary Owusu Afriyie, that they intend to set up a disciplinary committee and hold him before it. But then it goes through many channels or many procedures. They've initiated those procedures, and so at the appropriate time, they will give him a letter to appear before it. But meanwhile, they've asked him to step aside from his official duties as assistant headmaster.
Erastus Asari-Donkor, fantastic job.
Yeah, I wanted to ask one question.
Okay.
Do you know whether they were tried in a juvenile court?
Well, this is a circuit court, and if it's a juvenile court, I guess perhaps it will be held in camera, but it was held in an open court at the Ejisu Circuit Court with lots of people in attendance. So I think that's the answer to your question.
But did anybody raise issues with the procedure?
Nobody raised issues, and that's my concern, especially where they should have given the student a lawyer, or if he did not ask for one, they would have provided one for him, perhaps pro bono. He stood in the dock defending himself, and you could see the confusion with his explanation and all that, telling you clearly that he did not understand the procedures and even the charges that were preferred against him.
Also, he didn't have a lawyer.
He didn't have a lawyer. He was defending himself, and to some of the things that he pled against, you could see that his explanations, he did not know the impact of his explanation, and at a point in time, the judge himself had to enter a not guilty plea for him after he has explained himself. And so it tells you that with a lawyer, it would have made much difference.
Okay, Erastus, it looks like this is something that we have to pay particular attention to and get into the procedural matters in this case. We will definitely be returning to you, but thank you. Fantastic job that you've been doing for us. It helps us all appreciate this matter from the beginning when it broke. Let's go back to Dr. Ruth Owusu-Atwi, Head of Psychiatry Department, Komfo Teaching Hospital, Vice President, Ghana Psychiatrists Association. Just the final leg of this conversation, Doc. I don't know if you heard the CEO of the Mental Health Authority. There's some kind of intervention that can be made to bring the attention to the fact that this other student, this other boy, is going through some difficulties, and the charge right now should not be attempted suicide. What do you make of that suggestion?
Yes, I agree perfectly with my boss, Dr. Osei. I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that somebody was trying to die, was trying to take his life. Somebody was attempted to die by suicide and survived, and so must face the law for it. Of course, the law, or those who support this kind of practice, that suicide should be criminalized, say that it would, when you criminalize attempted suicide, it serves as a deterrent, and that people do not own their life. They belong to the state, and so they don't have the right to take their lives. I mean, these are some of the reasons why those who support this law say. But there are several reasons that we in the mental health field find to bring down this law, or to cancel this law. The fact that as we continue to criminalize attempted suicide, it serves to rather promote completed suicide. People will now decide that if I need to die by suicide, then I must make my plan work. I must make sure that I succeed. Because what betires me if I don't succeed? I get to face the law rather than get mental help for whatever distress I was going through. So making suicide attempt a criminal offense rather promotes suicide. Again, it prevents the government from putting funds even into the research of suicide. How would the government decide that I am putting funds into something that is supposed to be a criminal offense? Again, it prevents people from getting the right kind of help that they need for whatever underlying cause it is. Majority of people, almost, in fact, over 90% of people who attempt suicide usually have underlying mental health distress or mental health challenges. And if you just concentrate on punishing the person without finding out the underlying cause, then whatever mental challenge there was would be perpetuated. And I think that everybody in this country should stand up for this law to be repealed, for this law to be changed, and rather look at it as a means, as a channel of sending these people who attempt suicide automatically to a mental health facility to get the right kind of support and the right kind of help. Again, it boils down to the fact that everybody in the society should be able to identify very common risk factors for suicide in people and in each other, so that we can provide support. Because most people who want to attempt suicide give warning signs. Sometimes warning signs go on for as long as 2 years. They are posting things on their social media walls. They are saying things like, I'm tired of life. They talk in metaphors, and I'm traveling to a place. Their attitude change. They suddenly start drinking excessively. They start putting their house in order, talking to people that, oh, Charlie, one day if I'm not there, please take care of my kids for me, or I have hidden something here. One day if I'm not there, make sure you do A, B, C, D. And for your information, that one day would be the next day, because they have already planned to exit this world. Some of these common warning signs about suicide should be made known to everybody. And that is why mental health education should start as early as, even in our primary schools, give age-appropriate education about mental health for children to understand some of these situations, catch it early so that we can give the appropriate help. Attempted suicide should not be a criminal offense. It is rather promoting suicide in the country. The WHO has said that every 40 seconds, someone is dying of suicide. And if you count the number of 40 seconds in 1 hour, then lives are just being lost like that. And if there is one way to cut this number down, to cut this incidence or occurrence of suicide attempt down, why don't we do it? Why do we insist that we will continue to make it a criminal offense? I will take this medium, I'll use this medium to appeal to the powers that be. Let's just take a second look at this law. I know Mental Health Authority has fought. It's become a challenge, and the government, the judiciary should listen to us.
Well, Doc, thank you very much. And as you also represent the association, we want to plead with you, raise it on your platform. Let's see if there can be some intervention even whilst the processes still go on. If there's an appeal that you can make to the prosecutors in the Ashanti region so that this boy can be taken care of, we would really appreciate it.
Sure. That would be done.
Okay. All right. That's Dr. Ruth Owusu-Atwi, Head of Psychiatry Department, the Komfo Teaching Hospital, also Vice President of the Ghana Psychiatrists Association on this matter. The last leg of it will be had with the Executive Director, Amnesty International, Robert Akoto Amoafo, joins us. Good morning to you. I'm sure you've been following this issue in the Ashanti region. We're looking for intervention, so I wonder what Amnesty International can do to help.
Yes, thank you very much. One of the key things for us in this matter is ensuring the protection of children, and especially in a case where this involves a school. We think that it's important that we show as an example, because this is a unique case within our system, that this be an example, that we take care of this boy so that he doesn't get involved in another attempt again. It's important that we give the support needed, psychiatrists, social workers. I mean, that is one key thing that we continue advocating, that our social workers are giving the support so that they can provide every professional care that is needed for issues like this.
Now, this is Roland. I also co-host the show as well. One of the key aspects of this case is not only the related mental health issues or complications, but also the matters of procedure, of trial, of juveniles. And we understand the ages of these young people are 18 and 17, but they were arraigned before a normal circuit court. That definitely is an infringement on their rights, is it not?
Since they are at the age of 18 and 17, for the 17-year-old, of course, we could take them through a juvenile process instead of a normal process. And for that matter, even because of their ages, they may not have to go to an adult cell. They're supposed to be put in a juvenile process, a juvenile cell. So, of course, yes, the issue of ensuring that we take care of our children, even through the justice system. I know some years ago, there was a policy that was put in place by the Ministry of Gender, Children, and Social Protection on juvenile justice. And it's important that when we set these policies in place, we implement them. We make sure that we take care of the children according to our policies. We have signed on to international protocols that say that we will protect our children, even through the justice system. And so for us at Amnesty, we still insist that children are taken through the children justice process, not an adult process, that they are not joined together with adults in the cells, because they may face some sort of danger that we cannot take them through. That is why I mentioned earlier the need for social workers to be involved immediately a child is arrested. Immediately a child is picked up from school, there is a need for the school to collaborate with social workers so that they can help them take this process through and ensure that the child's interest is at the best in this process, and not just the issue of getting them through the justice system or trying to just punish them, but to ensure that sometimes these children have other issues that needs to be looked at, and it is only if they are given the opportunity with a counselor or given the process with a social worker who works with children to support them in this light. So we call on the Ministry of Gender and Social Welfare Department to beef up their work and join this process. And like I mentioned, this should be an example for them so that we don't have this happening again. We don't want these issues to be isolated issues. We want a holistic solution to these issues so that we get these children not into this issue anymore. There are so many children behind bars. I know some years ago, there was an attempt to get a public judgment where all children, any person who was put into jail when they were the age of a minor would be taken out of jail. Unfortunately, this case didn't go through, but we are believing that there's always an opportunity for a fresh start. So we are calling on the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection and the Social Welfare Department and the Ghana Education Service to get involved and get this issue resolved as soon as possible.
Well, thank you very much, Robert Akoto Amwafo. He is with Amnesty International. He is the boss, executive director for the Ghana chapter, and they have been preempting this and doing the advocacy alongside. And well, it's where we also say we have to open the phone lines and get all of you talking on this subject if we can, and the lines will be put on the screens for you so that you get to know whether you also want to make a contribution. But more so, let's say you have a child or you're a guardian, a parent, and you're even a young person yourself, you find yourself associated with this very incident. What can you say about it? We have the lines 03022116910. You can also get it very much interactive on our Facebook page, JoyNews on TV, through our Twitter handle as well, JoyNews on TV, and let us know what you think. This is very bizarre about an issue that confronts every parent, school administrator, because there may not be a proper laid-down procedure by way of what the norm is, even though the structures will be available. How do administrators, teachers tend to exhibit means of discretion and circumspection when they find themselves? Frank is calling us. Frank, where are you calling us from? Frank, good morning to you.
Good morning, Rose.
Yeah. Frankie, where are you calling from?
From Mampong.
Oh, Mampong.
Asante Mampong.
Asante Mampong. Please go ahead. I know this is very close to you. Ejisu is close by. So what's your contribution on the subject?
Decriminalization of the
suicide.
Mm. My view is that if we compare ourselves to the Europeans and Americans, theirs are higher than us. They have decriminalized their suicidal cases. So if we follow suit, what will happen to us? So if this boy knew that he would be imprisoned, he wouldn't have taken that chemical. So I think we should look at that case again.
Okay. Would you also do the advocacy that we need to decriminalize suicide?
I don't agree with that.
Okay. You think that if you want to take your own life, it's a crime?
Yes. I think the law should remain so that it will deter some people from taking their life.
Okay. Frank from Asante Mampong, thank you for calling through this interaction this one. We're grateful. Now let's go to Tony. Tony is just nearby, Malm, right here in Accra. Tony, good So we have Gideon. Gideon, good morning to you.
Gideon, all what I'm saying is that we shouldn't rush to crucify the assistant headmaster. You see, the crop of students that we have right now, we have a lot of recalcitrant students. So if you are not very careful, if you don't show paternalistic tendencies and other things, you might go overboard. So the most important thing is that the guy didn't die. And then I'm not sure that he's going to die. Okay. So all that we are saying is that I want to give a candid advice to all teachers and all stakeholders that we have to put a foot. We have to be very cautious when we are dealing with the students. Because ideally, I want to tell you, a teacher suggested something that about 50% of these students, it's like they don't make their left from their right. They are missingless. Some of them are missingless and missingless. They joined the SHTS bandwagon and they are misbehaving in the schools. So all that we are saying is that we are praying that the guy survives, and we are also praying that nothing untoward happens again. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was very succinct, straight to the point. Now let's go to Sogakofa, and it's where we have Victor. Victor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes, please. You've been watching or listening in. What were your contribution to the discussion so far?
I want to contribute to the open issue. I am one of the. I'm also my mother, which is 30 years old. My mother was staying in the family house, and unfortunately, he also abandoned. So I came back from Nigeria, and I took my mother out of the place, and I now built a house for my mother. And so then I now changed my mother from their traditional way to Christian. And unfortunately, when the people now saw that the traditional God something, my mother is no more following. And they gang up and they went to the 90-year-old woman's house. They now brought the 90-year-old woman out of his own house. They own his property, bring his building down, even a cross, this power and all this that he's training. They put it inside the fire, live. And as I'm talking to you, my mother is somewhere staying. For over 1 year now, these cases have been in the court. No, we are not even getting anything at all. Police will tell you we are afraid of the community because they have this spiritual to do something, so we cannot catch them. That's all what you hear about them. So this issue of this thing is happening. Me, myself, I'm a victim. As I'm talking to you, the 90-year-old woman is living. The apartment is down. The pictures is everywhere. We have the case in court. The people who destroy the building, police cannot arrest them because there's a politician behind. So
you took your mother to another place to avoid the people from a...
Today, as I'm talking to you now, the 90-year-old woman, I am the only first child that he don't even take care of. I am the first child he don't even take care of. The other one simply that he take care of. They are the one that even drive the woman. And I am a Christian. My mentor, T.B. Joshua, always tell us that old women, you have to take care of them.
Well, we're sorry to hear there's a deal, but thank you very much for sharing it with us. Yeah, I think when we discussed it yesterday, we did indicate that it wasn't peculiar, except that in this latest case, it was recorded. I guess that's why a lot of people are able to relate because they can see the video, but there are lots of things happening that have not been captured by the cameras. Really, really sorry for what you've gone through. I do agree with you. But please make sure that you keep the conversation ongoing, and you can do so virtually. We do have our social media platforms. JoyNews on TV is for Facebook, at JoyNews on TV, our Twitter handle, and let's all get the conversation going on. But look, we have to bring you the latest showbiz headlines, but before we do so, let's run this by you. Golden Finger Industries Limited is a fast-growing manufacturing company, and they are processing fruits into quality organic cosmetic products, cleaning and disinfectants produced right here in Ghana under certified FDA conditions. And they do have in stock GF hand sanitizers, GF rubbing alcohol, antiseptics, GF multi-purpose liquid soap, GF hand washing soap, GF antiseptic cleaner, the GF multi-purpose glass cleaner, and they are located at the Gisela Estates, SEC DVLA, right on the Wager Road. You can contact them on the following lines: 05462 74070, and then also
03462739990. They do have a reliable landline, and it is 0302957950. We have to take a break. When we come back, Sweet Cuddy is right here with the latest showbiz news.